Okay. Yo, what's up guys? Terrell here from Terrell Game Vlogs. We're going to talk about some One Piece stuff right now. Reason being is because I was going to make a video last week when we found out that Jinbei quote unquote is joining. And now that we have this chapter this week that has explained that he will be joining at a later time, I want to just throw out some mind concepts and some reasoning, because it seems like, ironically, other than me and I think J-Man and some few people I've seen on forums, I think we're in the minority with the whole Jinbei not joining. And honestly, when it comes to characters, Jinbei has been the most polarizing in terms of potential Straw Hat characters. The reason why I say this is because he's the only character that there's been this much of a debate on. Like, we didn't debate with Brook. We kind of debated with Frankie, but Frankie was just too fucking ridiculous, honestly, for us to think. Like, after Water 7, we kind of figured he was joining. Because you gave us the tragic backstory and all the other setups for him. With Jinbei, and I also told Zori I was going to make a video to explain this. The reason why I don't want Jinbei to join, and I kind of don't mind him doing this chapter, now I'll explain that in a minute. The reason why I didn't think he should join is, for one, he kind of fucks up with the Straw Hat dynamic. The Straw Hat dynamics, forgetting the fact that all of them follow a set pattern, Jinbei doesn't fit some of those. Jinbei doesn't fit like basic Straw Hat qualities. For one, each character was an outcast in their own right. Zoro was an outcast because he was like an addictively hard worker. He was the only person he connected with is Kuina, and Kuina died. Luffy was an outcast in the sense that he's the weakest and he is like the only one who was really into the pirate stuff. Like, Luffy's is he's probably the most ambiguous of all of them. Nami was an outcast just because of her being a money whore or being a stealing bastard since she was young. I mean, she's liked by her time, but she was still an outcast in some sense because of the whole Arlong thing. Usopp was an outcast just because of his father and because of his mindset with lying. You know, Chopper was an outcast because he's a fucking reindeer. Sanji was an outcast because he was like, they show every character being an outcast on some level. Jinbei, I can't see that because Jinbei isn't really an outcast on any level. The only outcast thing you could say, he's an outcast because of circumstance. He's an outcast because Whitebeard, because he got taken out of a Shibukai rank because of what they were going to do to Ace. That was the only reason why Jinbei was an outcast. And it isn't like he's still accepted in the country anyway. It's not like no one hates Jinbei in the country anymore. If anyone, no one hated Jinbei to begin with. No one hated Jinbei. That's how it worked. Like, there is no hate towards Jinbei. That's the problem. He's not like an outcast in his own right. The second thing against him is the obvious. He doesn't have a fucking dream. I don't want his dream to be protecting Luffy. That's not a real dream. The whole point, one of the biggest themes of One Piece is achieving our goals, not protecting what we love. If you're gonna do protecting what you love bullshit, only Luffy should have that mindset in some sense. And on the top of that, that shouldn't be your main purpose, in my opinion. At least as a Straw Hat, it shouldn't. I think in terms of connection, also you can kind of tell this entire arc was kind of set up for Jinbei in the sense that they kept trying to have Oda like push Jinbei in different ways. That's why you had him be more comical in this arc. This is like the most comical we've seen Jinbei. This entire arc. If nothing else, this is like the most comedy we've seen out of Jinbei. Besides the obvious joke, Luffy, everybody has. Actually, I want someone to do that, make a reel of like Luffy, because he says it so much. Like during the Marineford and the Marineford and like the Luffy Depression arc, he says Luffy so goddamn much. It's just hilarious. I mean, the main like his character came off as a mentor, so it's like a mentor or a guide character. So he seems weird to put a mentor guide character onto the boat. Mind you, the chapters kind of made it where he honestly does want to be on the boat. He's like, oh, I'm sure it'd be fun, but there's something I need to do, and I'll do that, and then I'll join, and then. Which now brings me to another subsection for Jinbei I want to talk about. I think he's going to die. I don't know. Originally, when I read him talking, that had something to do first. I got like that biggest hint of I think he's going to die syndrome. So I think Jinbei's gonna die. I don't even think Jinbei's gonna jump. I think Jinbei's gonna die. And it's kind of fucked up, but it's like a hint I get. Because usually, it reminds me of other stories where characters would say, I'll do it, but I'll be right, I gotta do something real quick, and then they never come back. That's how I feel like with Jinbei. Like, they're gonna have Jinbei, like, they're gonna leave for the next island, Jinbei's gonna be like, I'll catch up, and Jinbei's not gonna catch up. And Luffy's probably not gonna find out that Jinbei died until, like, way later. And you're probably thinking, well, who the fuck do you think is gonna kill Jinbei? Considering he says he has one thing Luffy has to do. Everything with Jinbei is wrapped up. The only thing I can see him dying now from is if he fought Arlong. I feel like this will be our way of seeing Arlong is if he fought Arlong. And that's implying Arlong can beat his ass, which we knew. I mean, for God's sakes, Arlong's never been able to beat Jinbei's ass. Just by looking at how much Arlong respects Jinbei, and that Jinbei was became captain after a point. Because Arlong isn't badass enough. And him and Jinbei obviously contradicted on their ideals. So it isn't like those niggas wouldn't fight if it was set up. But he said, like, all of Jinbei's issues were either in Fishman Island or with Whitebeard in them. And Whitebeard issues are all resolved. He resolved it in death, but you get the point. Here, everything's done. So the only thing I can see him fighting with is either Arlong or he's fighting with Big Man. Those are the only two people I think this could... Because and the reason why I say it's a fight, because most people are thinking, well, maybe he's just wanting to talk to somebody. No, it's a fight, and this is how I know it's a fight. Because if it wasn't a fight, why couldn't Luffy and them come? It had to be a fight that he had to settle. So I know it had to be something that it had to be a fight, because if it was something simple, he would just join the crew and ask them if he could take a detour to do that. No, it has to be a fight. I'm thinking it's a fight, and I think he's gonna die. That's my subsection for Jinbei. The subject with Shirahoshi, considering we just found out she's Poseidon in this chapter, I want to talk about her possibility as crewmate now. Because technically Oda hasn't fucked up on that promise saying that the next crewmate is going to be a girl. So we have Shirahoshi. What are the cons against Shirahoshi joining? She has the backstory. She has enough of a personality, honestly. I mean, honestly, you have two strong women, Nami and Robin. To have Shirahoshi as kind of a balance out to them, it's fine. Because Robin is like the assassin evil bitch. And Nami's like the nicer girl, which has like a mean tendency. To have a purely nice girl wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But the two things against Shirahoshi currently are fighting ability and size. Those are her two weaknesses. And you're thinking, what about backstory? She has a sad backstory. She watched her mother die, and then got locked in her room for 10 years. Not by choice, mind you. She just got locked in her room for 10 years. So she developed this spoiled crybaby personality. Because she wasn't hanging around her brothers all the time. She just had her brothers were known as like her personal guards and shit. Essentially, Shirahoshi spent 10 years of her life in solitude, which means she probably would click with Chopper a lot. Just because of that whole logic that she only was in one place for a certain amount of time. She was 10 years of her life she wasted in a tower with Vanderdecken constantly trying to kill her. Quote unquote. And on top of all of that, her mother died. And the last thing she did when she was outside is witness her mother get shot. So the backstory's there. Her dream would probably be similar to Usopp's. Usopp's he wants to be a brave warrior to sea. We know from earlier, like one of the beginning chapters, is that she wants to see the world. That was one of her things she wanted to do. So it's not like she wouldn't have a dream to do. Pirate aspect is probably one issue, but she seems not to have an issue with pirates, honestly. Especially with Luffy, anyway. The only thing that's really kind of is that she can't fight. I mean, people would say, well, she has the sea monsters. Well, I'm like, no, that doesn't work because you have all these other characters who can fight in their own styles. Let her use some water-based attacks, mermaid-based karate. I want to see mermaid karate, damn it, or some mermaid-based attacks. I'm expecting her to have like a sound wave, maybe some water cannons or some shit. But like the biggest issue she has is that she has no strength, which I find that hilarious considering she's an ancient weapon. And she has no like physical strength. Like that's the problem I have with Shirahoshi. And size. The problem with Shirahoshi is that if you're gonna put her on the boat, I don't see her being a straw hat in the sense that she's a giant mermaid who can swim. And like the problem, and then people were thinking, well, we still have that thing with Vanderdecking talking about back in, I think it was in the flashback, we mentioned like that device that can like age people. But the thing about that is, we know when fishmen get older, they do their fins change into legs, but she would still be a giant. She'd just be an older giant. And we don't know if her fins would turn into legs by 18. Like they would have age her until like she's 30, I believe. Like fishmen, I think when mermaid women turn 30 is when their legs split and, you know, and all that, their fins split and they turn into legs. So, by that logic, that means she'd just be a giant at that point. And she still wouldn't be tall, you know. She would still be giant unless you, like they would have to do, Oda would have to bullshit too much to get Shirahoshi into Straw Hat setup. But the Poseidon thing bothers me, because why would you, if you know that your daughter's an ancient weapon, that means you would lock your daughter up again, which is something you would think, you know, after all of this you wouldn't do. But your daughter's an ancient weapon. What are you supposed to do? Also, the fact that Neptune isn't necessarily keen on the fact that his daughter knows that is aware of her power now. Like, she's aware, and she has awakened it. Maybe she can't control it, but she's awakened the power to summon Sea Kings at will. I think the only thing that kind of helps that is that now that she isn't that much of a scaredy cat, it probably won't be that big of an issue in terms of like situations. Like it won't like be like she like hurts her nails and be like ah, and then the Sea Kings come. Like it'll probably be something bigger than that. And a lot of people are thinking that whole prophecy with Joy Boy and the mission with Noah has something to do with Luffy. Now that would help confirm Shirahoshi if they use Noah. That's implying they let them use Noah. Well, that hasn't happened yet. There hasn't been any correlation with Luffy except for the shit with Shirahoshi. And she just doesn't work. Like, she can't be giant. That's the problem with Shirahoshi. She's giant. But at the same time, if you shrunk her, it would come to me, it would fuck with her character. I don't know why. I can't picture Shirahoshi small size because it would bug the shit out of me. Like, one of the biggest appeals to Shirahoshi is how big she is. But I don't see them having a giant-sized crewmate at the same time. What are you gonna do? It's gonna be the Straw Hat crew, and Shirahoshi's gonna be like under the ship and shit, or she's gonna be hanging out on the side. It'd just be weird. You wouldn't even sail like that. She'd just be floating in the water. Like, no, and it's the new world. I'm sorry, she gotta have some type of real physical strength for me to think that. So my theory right now is that either Shirahoshi's ambiguous because of the Poseidon stuff, really. And then how much it depends on how much they correlate that with Luffy and Shirahoshi. Depends on how often that might come up. I mean, how the possibility of her joining that being a possibility. But Jinbei is the same thing. It depends. I'm thinking Jinbei's gonna die, and I think Jinbei will probably only be a Straw Hat member in spirit, if nothing else. That's the only thing I can think of. Because, I mean, from what we know of right now, I don't see Jinbei's not joining. I don't think Jinbei will ever like fully join if he dies. Like I think he's going to. Not that I want him to, but you know, at the same time, I'm not really keen on him, you know, joining because he doesn't fit Straw Hat criteria. I don't think Oda would suddenly change his ideals for how he sets up the Straw Hats to do that. Shirahoshi just has two things against it. Shirahoshi to me is more probable than Jinbei, because Jinbei right now seems like he's gonna die. Like you would have to fuck with Jinbei's character too much to make him join. At least for Shirahoshi, all you have to do is break the logic of the series. That or you can have Raider Devil Fruit, which you know is pretty much the easiest way to bullshit anything, which would kind of annoy me in itself. So right now we have two ambiguous characters. And not everyone's keen on Shirahoshi either. That's the problem. Like, at least with like almost all Straw Hats have been like obvious. Even Frankie after a point is obvious. So right now, you guys can tell me which one you think is going to join, which one you want to join, and comments on that. Sawyer, that's your information for Jinbei. I think Jinbei is going to die at some point. I believe it's probably gonna be set up the same way as Ace. Like I feel like he's gonna fight Arlong or Big Man, and I'm thinking it's Arlong honestly because. That would be a way to show Arlong in the arc and to show him as like a reoccurring villain. And that would give like Shirahoshi a kind of rival in a sense. Mind you, that's really pushing it. Like I know both of these are really pushing it on what I'm saying, you know. But that's just my thought. Tell me what yours is. This has been the Vlogs Again from your boy Terrell, and I'll catch you guys later. I'm gonna keep trying to like do different laters and see what happens. Well, you'll see that through the next slew of videos I do. All the videos I'll do. Waffles.